Joan Quinn Profiles. As an editor for Andy Warhol's Interview, the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner, LA Style, and Detour magazines, Joan covered the social set, the Hollywood hotshots, the international art scene, the mysteries of food, the excitement of travel, and the fabulous world of fashion. Joan continues to find creative people on the cutting edge who make things happen. Here's Joan Agajanian Quinn.
Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and welcome to the Joan Quinn Profiles. In the studio, waiting to be profiled, is Joyce Spizer and Jack Heller. Author Joyce Spizer was born in Dallas, earned a bachelor's and a master's from the University of Houston in marketing, not in mystery writing. She's a former Orange County private investigator, and she's been in that business for 37 years. Joyce has written 3 mystery novels. Hi, Joyce.
Hello, Joan. Thank you for having me today.
Name those novels for me.
Well, the first one is called The Cop Was White as Snow.
We don't have that
No,
with
we
us.
don't have that. It's an old book.
Okay.
And my book that came out last year is called I'm Okay, You're Dead. We have that here.
That. I'm going to show that. Tell us a little bit about this.
Well, this is the second in my mystery series, in the Harbor Point Mystery Series, and both of those books are based on real cases that I investigated during my career as an investigator.
And what is Harbor Point exactly?
It's a fictitious city down near Laguna Niguel.
Oh, I see.
Actually, these cases happened in Texas, but I fictionalized them and brought them to California because I wanted to bring my investigator here and let her do her work here.
I see. And then after this, the next mystery novel
is a true crime. It's called The Cross Country Killer, the Glenn Rogers story.
Oh, it is a true crime. Can you use the real characters in it?
You can when you have permission from the family to do so. I like to think of it as different than most true crimes because I didn't use things off of AP and I didn't use all the trial transcripts. I actually know the family personally. I have over 60,000 personal documents from them. I attended the second trial in Van Nuys, California.
Show the book cover while she can.
I attended the second trial in Van Nuys, California. He's a serial killer. He is O.J. Simpson's investigation team's #1 suspect in the Brown Goldman murders, actually. And I think it has a wonderful future, and I'm very excited for the new book.
But this is not a novel, then?
No, it isn't.
Ah, so this is a little bit of a deviation from what you've been doing.
And actually, when the family came to me and asked me to write it, I said, absolutely not. I have no interest at all in a true crime, and
there you are.
And I wrote it.
Were you working on the investigation of it, or?
No, I had been retired about 3 years, 2.5 or 3 years, when the family approached me. They live in the Coachella Valley, which is Southern California, south of Palm Springs.
That's where you live?
Yeah, that's where I live. And they approached me through the mayor of our little city down there and said, you know, there's his brother, Claude Rogers, who wrote the book with me. Claude would like the story told. And it tells a lot about how a serial killer is not only born and raised, but is allowed to go through life without people making some statements and changing the future and the destiny.
Did you interview him?
Many times. Many times.
Is he behind bars?
He is on death row in Florida. I met with him in March, and I will be meeting again with him later on.
So, did you find, this is fascinating, because the family wanted this story told. Was there a reason?
The siblings wanted the family story told. The mother does not know that the book has been written, and I don't think she's going to like her press.
Oh, that's what I was wondering.
Yeah, there are 7 siblings.
Oh,
a girl and
why
6
do they
boys.
want it known? Do they want to clear themselves that
No.
they're not like that? They're like their brother? Or?
No, Glenn's not the only killer in his family either, and they have over 300 arrests among the 7 of them.
Are you kidding?
I'm serious, and they want to show the world that the way you raise a family is not the way the Rogers raised their family.
Isn't that great?
Yeah, it's more of a lesson. I mean, they know they're not going to get any proceeds from the book. I'm writing the book. I wrote the book. But they want the world to know that if you hear somebody's plea for help and you don't rise to the occasion and change destiny, that's what happens. You raise a serial killer.
That's really interesting. I hate to get off that subject, but how did you get into writing?
Well, when I was in, let's see, about 1991, I got interested in writing, and I knew at the time that I'd be retiring as an investigator one day.
Oh, you mean that soon? You haven't been writing that long?
About 10 years.
Ah.
And district attorneys and attorneys that I did reports for would say, you write a really funny story about, you know, murder cases and rape cases and things. Had you ever thought of writing? And I said, no, but I will. And I started taking some classes at Santa Barbara and Chapman College in Fullerton, California. And I just took a lot of classes and started writing, and I actually sold my first story to a newspaper in '94.
Oh, so
that's my first sale.
Were you sending stories into
sure.
journalistic type of stories rather than author type of stories?
Right. Just trying to get published.
Yes.
You know, it's like you can't get a job, you can't until you have experience.
Exactly.
You know?
So that's what you were doing.
Right.
And what was the physical process of writing? Did you use a computer then?
Oh, yes.
Oh, because you were probably very adept at computer.
I'm a very fast typist, and I've always used the computer.
So you see it on the page as you type it up.
I'm a very technicolor person, and I really, I knew when I started writing my first novel that I would write it about, and it's actually based on a story of a murder of a police officer in Houston. And so I always knew if I ever wrote a mystery that it would be his story, because his murderer was never brought to justice, and I know who it was.
Is that right?
So it really makes me mad, and every time they get a new chief in Houston, I put the police case number on the book and mail it to them.
Did you investigate that?
I did informally for the family, because he and his wife and his daughter were friends of mine.
Oh, what's the actual process after? When you start writing, do you make an outline first?
I don't outline. No.
You just go chapter by chapter?
No. Well, and the good part is with the 3 that I've written is that I know how it ends. You know, I know that I know Glenn is on death row in Florida, and I know how both my stories end because those were cases that I worked, and I know how I caught them at the end.
So you have a beginning and an end, and then you just go through the whole thing.
Right.
Is there a group of mystery writers?
Oh, there are many of them, and
I know.
I'm so excited to be a part of them. I'm Sisters in Crime Los Angeles and Orange County. I'm Mystery Writers of America. I'm Private Eyes of America.
What is that? Are there groups of them? People?
Oh, yes. Oh, we just cluster together and just tell really bizarre stories.
Is that what you do more than anything?
Oh, yeah.
And then you laud each other. You give each other awards?
Well, that's true, too. There are many awards given out by most of the organizations, like Sisters in Crime. And, you know, there's the Edgar, you know, there are hundreds of awards given.
When you write your novel, what part is you?
Well, in my first 2 stories, the Harper Point stories, I didn't think Camilla Walker was me, but we have a friend who went to China, and on her long plane trip over, she read the book and she said, I felt like you were traveling with me the whole way, because she knew me and she knows that was me.
So you were telling the story?
Right. So I guess I am the protagonist in my first 2 books.
What about all the background? Do you remember how the rooms looked? You have notes on that, or is it all from memory?
No, it's all in my head. It really is all in my head. I've lived a very colorful life, and someone asked me one day why I didn't write my own life story, and I said, because I'm not through yet. I don't know how it ends. But I do see in Technicolor, and the beautiful part about doing a fiction book is that if you don't know it, you just fake it.
And you can,
Oh,
right?
sure.
Yeah.
You can't in the true crime, but you can in fiction. So.
Well, you went to university and you have a master's and a bachelor's in marketing.
Yes.
And you obviously, well, maybe you did use it in your private detective work.
Well, we've all, you know, marketing is very much a part of what you do in your life, whether you know it or not, whether you're trained in it or not. And it's the way you get more assignments. It's the way you get known for networking and your reputation. So when I realized as it flowed over, and I was not going to be, you know, Sue Grafton, I'm not going to be John Grisham. You have to make your own way in the world. And I just developed the marketing plan that would be my life for my mystery writing.
You did it for your mystery writing, but did you use that marketing skill while you were a private detective?
I'm sure we did, absolutely.
But not consciously.
Not consciously, perhaps. But again, it's the way you know. It's the way you know that if you do a good job, you'll get another assignment. You know.
You wrote this, Power Marketing.
I did.
And it's Power Marketing, your novel.
Yes.
And fiction, nonfiction, promoting.
Right.
What are some of the lessons in this book?
Well, I wrote that at the behest of a seed planted by Jeffrey Deaver. We were at the World Mystery Conference, and he suggested that I do some research on it. And I outlined the book on the plane and came back and wrote the novel. It was just a spur of the moment thing to help other people. And the lesson that I have to tell new writers is that when you've done all the research for your novel and you've written it and rewritten it 1,000 times, and you finally have marketed it, and maybe you've got an agent or not have an agent, and you have a book ready to go, and you're holding it in your hand, 10% of your work is done. The other 90
only
is how
10%.
Only 10%. The other 90 is how I'm going to find you to buy it. That's the other 90%.
That's amazing. 10%. I mean, it looks like that's so much work.
It is well known that you only have 42 seconds in a bookstore to actually get someone to buy your book.
To catch them.
Yeah, to catch that buyer's eye and get it sold.
This, of course, when I was going through it, the first printing was in 2000.
Yes.
Did you keep updating it? Because it seems like there's names and places in it.
Yes, there are names and places, and of course the publishing industry is very mobile.
Yes.
And as with any book, I tell people to always verify names and things before they mail things out. I think that's my disclaimer in the beginning. And with the advent of the e-books and the internet publishing now, obviously my book needs some updating, and I probably will be updating it next year. I have been keeping notes all along, things that worked, things that didn't work.
So you might change it a little bit too.
Absolutely, and at the end of the book, I welcome other writers to send me some hints on things they did that worked.
At the back.
And I've gotten some extraordinary ideas out of it.
That's great.
They'll be included in my next.
Will you be teaching any classes?
I do teach, as a matter of fact. I lecture at Cal State San Bernardino several times a year, and I teach at the College of the Desert. I teach creative writing. I teach how to get published. I even teach seniors down at Sun City about doing their memoirs. So
I think
I do a lot of, and I go to the high schools and tell kids, I work on their self-esteem and help kids that have learning disabilities how to write. So
we're so happy.
I'm excited about that.
And I hear you have a screenplay.
I do have a screenplay, and it's a total different thing than this. It's a romantic comedy, and it's based in the Coachella Valley where I live. It's called Off Your Rocker. I just finished it, and it's being shopped around New Hollywood.
Oh, good.
So I met with the producer Sunday, so cross your fingers for me.
Let's see Joyce Spizer on the screen.
On the screen. Screenplay ply. Okay.
Thank you so much for being with us.
I appreciate you having me today, Joan. Thank you.
And thanks for watching this part of our show. Don't go away, because we have Jack Heller coming up next. Hi, I'm Joan Quinn, and we're back with director-actor Jack Heller, who was born in Brooklyn, New York, and raised in Newark, New Jersey. His high school alma mater graduated Philip Roth, but kicked out Jerry Lewis, and that's what Jack told me, so don't hold me to that. Then he went to NYU. And were you waiting tables in the city after NYU?
No. That came later. When I did dinner theater, when dinner theater first started in this country, I had I guess it was in Richmond, Virginia. We waited on tables and acted after that.
But you right from NYU?
Shortly thereafter, yeah.
So did you know you wanted to be an actor at that point?
Oh, yes. I think at first I was a musician. I played sax and clarinet.
Oh.
Liked it a lot, but when I played dances, everybody was either necking or talking. And I loved doing concert work. We did concert work.
Because then they were watching you.
They were watching, right. We did the Glenn Miller arrangements and all that, and I played clarinet, and I just loved it. But I got involved in the community theater, and that's what started the whole thing.
But that was before college, I guess.
Oh, yes, yes,
Oh,
when I
way
was
before?
about 16.
Oh, it was?
15, 16.
So you were really ready when you went on Broadway.
Oh,
that
took a little while longer.
Did it take a little while to get there?
Yes, in my late 20s, my mid to late 20s.
But that's still pretty early, isn't it?
Yes, it is. I've been very fortunate.
Because coming out of NYU and doing dinner theater, and then to go right into a major play.
Well, it was 8 years of dinner theater.
Well,
8 years, and then I got into a Dory Sherry play, One by One with Donald Madden, and the rumor was that was going to be the big hit, and that Love by Murray Schiskell was going to be the failure, and it turned out just the opposite.
But you were in both of them.
Oh yes, what happened was we played a week, and I ended up in an office typing serial numbers, and I said, what was I doing last week? And I said, oh my God, I was opening in a Broadway show.
Is
And I
that
suddenly got a headache, and I left the office, and I vowed never to work in an office again.
And so back
After
to the
that.
stage?
Not so soon, but about a year later, I went to the office, the production office in Love, and said I could do what Alan Arkin is doing in that play. And I had just finished a Broadway play.
So you had some credentials.
That's right, exactly. And they called me in to read, and I memorized the part, I read it, and I got the road company, eventually ended up on Broadway understudying Gene Wilder.
Oh, so that
who
was how it
went
was.
off to do Bonnie and Clyde and a few commercials, and I took over for him.
Then you took over. The interesting thing about that is, years later, you directed Love at the Geffen Playhouse.
That's it was called the Westwood Playhouse. At the time.
Westwood
Yeah.
Playhouse.
Now the
yeah.
Geffen, yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I
but
did.
how did
was-
how did that come about? Why weren't you starring in it instead of directing it?
Oh well, I was in it as well.
Oh, you were.
Yes, I
oh,
was.
please.
That was a disaster.
It was?
Yes, I worked with Sheila McRae, who was wonderful in it, and then I worked with Jack Carter, and he was not easy.
You couldn't direct him?
I couldn't, and Sheila and I fared quite well in the play. At that time, they had television reviewers as well, and we fared quite well, but it was kind of a filler at that theater.
The funny thing is, when you and I were talking before, you said, I'm going to answer these questions yes, no. And I went, don't kill me. But that brought to mind that what does a director do if he can't direct his stars?
That's true.
Same thing,
That's
isn't it?
true. It's very frustrating. Very frustrating.
Do you have to try to
Indeed.
approach it or in different ways? Or do you get
try-
mad? Or what do you do?
No, you don't get mad because that'll just cut off the communication.
Totally, yeah.
And after that, I had the fortune or lack of fortune of directing Mary Hartman,
That was TV
and Louise
then.
Lasser. And so I went from one personality to another, and that did me in. And I said, I will never direct again.
Is that right?
And I acted for years, and I started directing recently again.
You did Tamara.
Right.
And you did Tamara in Los Angeles. You did it in Europe.
Yes.
And
yes.
playing what
in
roles?
Italy. I did the piano player De Spiga, and I also covered Gabriella D'Annunzio, who was quite a character.
And looked very elegant on
Oh
stage.
yes, yes, I loved doing that character.
How were you received in Italy with that?
Italy, the Communist Party hated the play.
Ooh.
They really did. They hated the play because, in a sense, it showed Gabriella D'Annunzio was more than he was portrayed here. They portrayed him as a ladies' man and a cocaine addict and all that, but he was quite a hero to some Italians.
Because
in the
they knew
beginning.
the background
Right,
of
right.
it.
And it would just be like if the Italians came over here and portrayed John Kennedy with Marilyn Monroe.
Yeah, and
that
nothing
was
else.
the extent
Right,
of it.
right,
Yeah.
right. That's great.
Same reaction.
And then you did Tennessee Williams.
Oh yes, I
played
played
Tennessee.
I love doing that. I might do that again. I'm not
How did
sure.
did he come and see the play?
No, he had passed on. This I
But-
only did a couple of years
Oh,
ago,
you
about
just
3
did.
years ago.
Oh, I see.
And that was quite an extraordinary experience.
Did
I
you-
thought an author like that who has Blanche Dubois saying a line, the one thing I cannot abide in life is deliberate cruelty.
Right.
And yet Tennessee was capable
Of
of
being-
deliberate cruelty.
But
But,
how
it
do-
came out
how
of
do you-
fear.
How do you write those things and actually then live the opposite? Interesting.
Well, it's interesting. We expect, at least I did, I always seem to think that artists are necessarily more compassionate, more understanding, and that's not always true. I mean, look at Wagner. His music is magnificent, and yet,
tough, yeah.
yes, and an anti-Semite. You know?
Exactly.
So an artist is no different than anyone else, except in their chosen line.
And they have something to give
Right.
that people can accept culturally,
Right.
but you don't have to accept them personally, do you?
Exactly, exactly.
I never think about that part of it.
Yeah.
You were in Nuts.
Yes, I was. Yes, I was.
Was that
in that.
funny too, or
That
bad?
was no. That was a fascinating, wonderful experience. That was almost like being in a ball game. The audience was cheering and hissing, and it was marvelous.
From the audience.
Yes, yes, it was quite exciting. I was in that for the last 3 months of the run, and that was on that theater right in the midst of Hollywood. That's now a discotheque.
Oh, don't ask
the
me.
Las Palmas Theater.
Oh.
It was, yeah.
Well, you've gone. You said you started on the stage, acting got too much. Then you directed. Then directing got too much.
And now I'm back to forming my own theater, which is so easy to do. You know?
Well, that must be the hardest thing to do.
It's terrible.
You have the Laurel Grove Theater?
Yes. I would not recommend, if there's anyone out there that wants to start a theater, do it with a lot of money.
But you're the artistic director
Yes.
of the Laurel Grove
Yes.
Theater, which is on Ventura and
Right.
Laurel Grove.
Right. 12265, in case anyone's listening.
And you teach acting there?
I used to teach. I'm not doing that.
But they
that much
teach
anymore.
acting you have an
At the
ensemble?
Laurel Grove, there are rentals in my theater that have classes, yes.
Oh, I see. That's how they
Yes,
do it. And do you
right.
give workshops as well?
I do have a workshop where we're trying to form a company in order to, do plays there and work with each other and kind of have a commonality in the way we work and all that. Although I'll work with any actor who's good, whichever way they work.
When they come, say, to rent a space to
Yes.
teach acting, they bring their own people with them?
Oh, yes,
just to use
they
the
do.
space?
Yes, they just rent the space, and that's what helps us pay our rent.
And then can they do a production there as well?
I do talk to people if they're interested in renting out the place for production purposes. However, our name is attached to it, and it's very important that I know the quality of work and the kind of play that they're doing.
Well, that's what I was wondering about, keeping a level of...
Yes, because if you just allow
interest.
anyone to go in there that has money and the work is bad, they'll associate your theater
Right.
with that kind of work, and I don't want that to happen.
And you've had these plays at the Laurel Grove that are teaching or strong or conviction, having a conviction.
Well, I always believe that theater should ask important questions of the society. I do believe you can entertain at the same time. But like our first play was about spousal abuse, and there was some humor in it. But it
who
was
wrote
quite
it?
strong. Edward Allen Baker.
And did you work with him? Was it contemporary?
On the phone, it's a contemporary play, a wonderful play, a very exciting play. And see, when people leave the theater and they're different than when they walked in, that's what excites me. That's what makes all this hard work
How do you
worthwhile.
know that? As a director and as an artistic director at the theater, do you have feedback from your audience?
Yes, you can sense
Or can
that.
you feel it?
You can sense that. You can also, to me, the best judges are people who work in the theater. They're much more discriminating.
Will they tell you?
And yeah, they will. Now, there are some people that never tell you the truth, but there are some that will.
Critics.
Yeah, well,
They never know what to think, though.
it's
No.
true. It's just a matter of opinion as far as
It
critics
is a
are
matter,
concerned.
even
I
from-
have to do my work, and whatever happens, happens. I have a dream, I have a vision of what I want to do, as the actors do, and we kind of combine our talents to bring this story and ask the questions, and whichever way, whatever the results are, there's nothing anyone can do about it.
Right. What happens when you're starting to put a play together? Do you cast it as well?
Yes.
Do you pick the lighting person, the sound person?
Sometimes, in our case, we're working on such a small budget that my partner did the lighting, and he did an extraordinary job, Greg Von Der.
So he would be
yes,
like
he
the
did the
resident lighting person.
He doesn't want to be. He wants to direct too. If and when we get more monies, we will absolutely go out and hire people. But generally, we're trying to keep as much in-house as possible.
So the first one was a very thought-provoking play.
Yes,
the second
one was
a
Ancients of Zimbabwe, which was a rental. I knew the people.
Oh, I
Rick
see.
Wallace and Lillian Dark, and she did a one-woman show with two African singers from South Africa about a white woman growing up in apartheid South Africa.
Oh, so it was
And that
interesting.
was also very provocative and interesting. She befriended this young black boy when they were growing up. They played together, and then suddenly pre-adolescence, they were torn apart because of the apartheid
Oh,
laws.
right.
And she meets them years later when their lives have changed. And it's quite an interesting
That's
play.
great. But before we leave, I want to talk about the play that I saw, Joe Pintoro's play,
Yes.
which was loosely based on Covenant House.
That's right.
Tell us a little bit about
scandal
that.
that happened about 10 years ago of a priest who had an affair with one of the young boys that he was supposedly taking care of. He helped hundreds upon hundreds of homeless
Drug addicts.
Yes, and homeless children, and found them jobs and a place to stay, and he was involved with several of the boys. Now, Joe Pintoro based this play on it. This is really about a priest who gets involved with one boy.
Yeah, but this
One
is fiction.
And
It's just loosely based on
yes,
that.
it is. And it questions dogma of the church. It questions humanity. The thing I loved most about the play is it has a compassion for not just the victim. It's very easy, as I said in my directorial notes, to forgive the righteous. Very
Exactly.
hard to forgive the perpetrator.
But the interesting thing about that is the cardinal, who's played by Travis Holder,
Yes.
is not very understanding. He wants to.
No, he'd
he
like
wants to
to-
forgive
Yes.
the not the guilty. He wants to.
Right. But there's my favorite line in the play is another priest says, he says, if he's innocent, I'll forgive him.
Yes.
And then the other priest says, but Jesus didn't die for the innocent.
That was the best part, and
that
it
line
just sends
is incredible.
and he walks away. That
Yes.
priest walks away from it.
Yes.
But it's just what you're saying. It's easy to forgive the person that you think is not guilty.
It's a victim, yes.
Yeah.
But we have to have compassion for everyone. if
But your
we're gonna
lead, Stephen Nichols, was absolutely brilliant.
Mhm.
He's gorgeous. He's you pull everything out of him. I mean,
Yeah.
he's on that stage alone.
Yes, his second act is quite extraordinary.
And you feel for him.
Yes.
And that's when you start forgiving him. It's like he's just a person.
That's
He's
right.
a priest, but he's just
He
a
had
person.
a weakness. And the boy was not pure innocence either.
No, that was
That's
the
what
thing.
makes it so interesting.
Well, I thought
It's
it
not
was
just
great.
black and white.
I
yeah.
thought it was great, and I think you did a good job. And
Thank
I
you.
loved having you with us today,
Thank you.
Jack
It was a
Heller.
pleasure being here. Inch
Thank you.
besses.
Shad love him. Thanks for watching. Keep writing to 777 South Figueroa, 44th floor, Los Angeles 917. And we'll see you next time on the Joan Quinn Profiles. Yes.